And good afternoon, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. Welcome to another episode of Steelers Brunch with Tony. I am your host, Tony Defeo. So thank you, everybody, for joining me. And before I get started, as always, I want to remind you to please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we bring you so many podcasts each and every day. And it's not just on YouTube, but we have many. You can find our podcast on so many podcasting platforms: Apple, Google, iHeartRadio. So please check that out. You have Steelers Preview. You have the Steelers Hangover, hosted by yours truly and Brian Anthony Davis, the day after each and every Steelers game during the regular season. There's the Live Mic, hosted by BTSC co-editor Michael Beck. There is Let's Ride, hosted by co-editor Jeff Hartman. There's the Scobro Show, hosted by co-editor Dave Schofield and his brother Rich. There's so many. There's the Retro Show, hosted by me and Brian Anthony Davis. There's the Know Your Enemy. Well, I'm having a slow start. I'm having a rusty start to my show, just like the Steelers on Monday night. Know Your Enemy, hosted by Michael Beck and Jeffrey Benedict. It's always great football talk, so please check that out. And, of course, please check out Behind the Steel Curtain, the website, where we bring you news, breaking stories, transactions, injuries, commentary, film breakdown, everything you need. We're the one-stop shop for all your Steelers needs. So please check that out. And thank you for everybody in the live chat for joining me. There's T-Money, my good friend Terry, Jared Devil, George Teston, Ollie Howard. I haven't seen him in a while. Kathy Ford, Erica. So thank you all for joining me. And as always, I just have a few topics I'd like to touch on today's show. And the first thing, of course, is the Steelers' Week 1 victory over the Giants last Monday night at MetLife Stadium. It went about as well as I expected it to go. I figured it would be a sluggish start at the beginning on both sides of the ball, and then the Steelers' talent would take over. Their superior talent would take over, and they would pull away, and that's pretty much what happened. And it wasn't that sluggish of a start. I think, if that game had taken place on Week 8, I don't think anybody would say, oh, it's because they didn't have any preseason. It's just, sometimes NFL games get off to a slow start. And I thought Ben Roethlisberger looked great. He had, if anybody was going to be rusty, it was him. I mean, he missed an entire year with a major elbow injury, and it required surgery and extensive rehab. So if anybody was going to be rusty, it was him. And, he looked kind of rusty in the beginning, but not. Again, it wasn't that much different from a lot of starts to games for Ben Roethlisberger. So I was really encouraged by his performance. I thought he was fairly accurate. The throw to Chase Claypool, his first ever catch in the NFL on the sidelines. I mean, it was great on both ends. It was the throw by Roethlisberger couldn't have been more accurate, and of course the catch by Claypool was. I mean, what a first catch to have. That's like hitting a home run in your very first at bat in the major leagues. I mean, he got both feet down. He was diving on the sidelines, got both feet down, and held onto the ball as he was being tackled to the ground. So it was very Antonio Brown-like as far as some of the Houdini catches he's made, or he used to make anyway, when he was playing in the NFL. So I thought it was a great debut by him. Obviously, Juju Smith-Schuster with 2 touchdowns answered a lot of critics. After 1 week, it's only 1 week, so you can't really make any bold statements. But I thought he had a great first game, given how much he was criticized for his performance last year, and for of course, his omnipresent social media personality. So I thought it was a good start by him. I thought James Washington, the touchdown he had was spectacular. It was such not just second effort, but second and third effort to catch the ball, break the tackle, stay on his feet, and dive into the end zone. So that was a great catch by him. I thought Deontay Johnson was obviously he was very shaky in the beginning with some drops, and of course the fumble on the Steelers' first punt return of the season. He fumbled, which set the Giants up at the 3-yard line. But it's going to happen. He's a young player. I know there's a lot of hype about him surrounding him, but he is a young player, so you can't expect those guys to be perfect. I thought a lot of people were concerned about the defense, but I mean, for today's NFL, I think it's the perfect defense. It's fast, it's relentless. After it's getting after the quarterback, they're getting better at tackling each and every year, I think. And of course now they're taking the football away, which is something they struggled with for years. You saw that Monday night, and you saw how valuable that was, and how critical the turnovers were. The pick by T.J. Watt early in the game that set up the Steelers' first touchdown. I mean, that was you talk about a freakish athletic play to jump up at the line of scrimmage and snag that ball from Daniel Jones. I didn't even see it. I was looking downfield because I was just anticipating where Jones was going to throw the ball. So I didn't even see Watt jump up and stab that ball. That's how quick that was. And of course, later in the game, the Giants was late in the third quarter. They were on a 18-play, 87-yard drive, and it looked like Steelers, who were winning 16-10 at that point, looked like they were going to surrender the lead. And of course, what happened? Bud Dupree put the pressure on Jones, forced a bad throw, and of all people, Cameron Hayward picked it off in the end zone. And the Steelers not only snuffed out a score there, but they turned that into 3 points. It went from a possible 1-point deficit to a 9-point lead. So it just shows you the importance of takeaways in today's NFL, because you can't stop a team for 60 minutes very often anymore. This isn't the 1970s any longer, where you can just shut a team down. Although I'm guessing Saquon Barkley probably feels like it's the 1970s after that first game when the Steelers limited him to 6 yards on 15 carries. I mean, they were determined to take him out of the game, and they did. I can't imagine Barkley having a worse game in his career if he plays another 10 years, 12 years. That was just a masterful performance by Tyson Oluwalu, Hayward, Tuitt, Dupree, Watt, everybody involved with stopping him. They should be commended. And of course, the game that Dupree had, I don't think he gets nearly enough credit. That's usually how we do it in Steeler land. There's always one linebacker that gets overshadowed by the other. Lamar Woodley was often overshadowed by James Harrison. Joey Porter overshadowed James Ferrier. Jack Lambert overshadowed Jack Ham and Andy Russell. I think the only time that two linebackers got equal billing with Steeler fans was Quiver and Quake with Greg Lloyd and Kevin Green when they were doing their thing in the mid-90s. But Dupree, coming off of his career year last year with 11.5 sacks and just playing all-around great football, stopping the run and everything that's involved with his game, he picked up right where he left off last year. He didn't get any sacks in Monday's game, but he had a few pressures and made a couple tackles in the backfield. So I look for some big things from Dupree this year. Obviously, I think he's going to be gone after this year because I don't think they're going to be able to afford him, because they're going to have to pay T.J. Watt and a few other guys. But I think he's going to have another great year. And it's not because he's looking to get paid. It's just it took him a while. Some players it takes a while to reach their full potential, and I think he finally did last year. You could thank Keith Butler for that, maybe the switch from Joey Porter to Keith Butler, outside linebackers coach. But whatever you want to credit, you can see the results are pretty telling. So overall, I thought it was a great game. There's some things you could probably clean up, but again, though, you're not going to shut. As far as the defense is concerned, and again, I know a lot of people were concerned about the defense, but one of those touchdowns came on after a very questionable pass interference penalty on Joe Hayden in the first half, and the second one came. It wasn't quite garbage time, but it almost was at that point. It was 26-10, and the Giants scored a touchdown to make it 26-16 with just under 2 minutes to go, and they missed on the 2-point conversion. So I guess you can't quite say it was garbage time, but it kind of felt that way. So I'm not that worried. The great thing about having YouTube now and having great access to a lot of old Steelers videos, Steelers games, is I can go back and watch some network broadcasts of some of these legendary teams, like the teams from the 70s. I'm not talking about NFL films where everything's distilled down into great highlights. I'm talking about the actual network broadcast. And if all you have to do is watch a quarter or two of one of those games from the 70s, and you'd see a lot of future Hall of Famers missing tackles and giving up touchdowns and throwing interceptions and fumbling and being called for penalties. So, I think we have this. We think that, especially nowadays, with everybody having an opinion at the ready, on social media, we think that we kind of over dramatize every mistake and every touchdown that's given up or every penalty that's called. But I think we're going to see another great dominant year from this defense. So the only unfortunate thing to come out of Monday's game were some pretty serious injuries on the offensive line. They were already missing David DeCastro. He missed pretty much all of training camp I don't even know what the injury is at this point. I heard it was a knee. I heard it was an ankle, but I haven't heard a whole heck of a lot about the seriousness of it, other than he didn't play Monday night and he's not going to play Sunday against the Broncos. So he was out, and late in the game, Zach Banner, who won from by all accounts, a very good competition between him and Shooks Okorafor for the right tackle spot. He won that, but late in the game, he suffered a season-ending ACL tear, and that was unfortunate. And right before that, Stefan Wisniewski, the quality depth that they signed for such occasions as missing a player like DeCastro, he went out with a chest injury, a pectoral injury of some sort. I don't know if it's a tear or how serious it is. Tomlin seemed pretty optimistic at his press conference on Tuesday, but now he's on the IR. He was placed on the IR on Friday. So I don't know how long he's going to be out. Is that a season ender? Is that a few weeks? Who knows? So you had some pretty good depth and along the line. Now you're missing not only your best lineman in DeCastro, but you're missing your top backup along the interior line. So that's concerning. I'm not really that worried about right tackle because, Zach Banner pretty much had no track record at that position. So had Shooks Okorafor won the spot and suffered the same injury, would be just as concerned now about Zach Banner and his experience. So I'm not really that worried about Okorafor. I think he started 4 games over his first couple of years, and he did okay for himself. And as I mentioned, he had a pretty he almost won the job out of training camp. So I think he'll be fine at right tackle. The problem is the depth and right guard with Kevin Dawson. They like Kevin Dawson. They think highly of him. A lot of fans do. I love Kevin Dawson, but he is a total unknown. I mean, I'd like to say he's going to do great based on his college career. I mean, he was a 4-year starter. He was highly decorated. He looks like one of those guys that could very easily be a plug and play guy for 10 years, like Ramon Foster was in 2009. Nobody even knew about him back then when he was an undrafted free agent out of Tennessee. Nobody knew he'd had the career that he would go on to have with Pittsburgh, but he did. But when it comes to Dawson, we're not going to know until we know, and he's going to get that chance to show us on Sunday because he's going to get the start at right guard. So you're going to have from center to left. You're going to have veterans. So you're going to feel fine there. But from right guard over to right tackle, it's going to be you're going to have 2 young guys. So there is cause for concern. And the Steelers had to activate some linemen. Derwin Gray. They re-signed Gerald Hawkins. They called up J.D. Hauer. He's an interior lineman. So the depth there is totally unknown. But that's what happens when you suffer 3 injuries. Back to back to back. So that's something worth keeping an eye on. So we'll have to see how that plays out. So the key is obviously getting DeCastro back as soon as possible. If you get him back, then I think as far as your starting five, you're going to be okay with Villanueva, Filer, Pouncey, DeCastro, and Okorafor. I think you're okay there. Then it's just a matter of how bad is Wisniewski's injury. If he's out for the entire year, well, that might be a problem because the JD fellas, another unknown, and you don't know what you're going to get out of him if he has to go in there and play. So I think the key is getting DeCastro back and Wisniewski back as soon as possible. So we'll see how Dawson and Shooks do on Sunday. Best of luck to both of them. So those are pretty much all my thoughts about the Giants game. I thought it was a really good first game. It wasn't a work of art, but as I wrote last week, they didn't color out the lines that much either. It was a pretty good start to the season, other than the injuries. So that is my first topic, and now my second topic is something that I find fascinating, and that's the ratings. As you probably read, if you've been paying attention, the ratings were down a bit for the NFL in week 1. Depending on who you talk to, they were either tanking or they were down a little bit, depending on your perspective. I don't know how. Like the Steelers game was down 17% from the year before, so I don't know how you can call that tanking. But they were down. But the weird thing is they were up from that same game 2 years earlier in 2018. I think it was the Lions. My notes: the Lions and the Jets. So it was up from that game. The kickoff game on Thursday Night Football with the Chiefs and Texans, that was down, I want to say 16% or 12%. I don't know. These numbers are all over the place. But again, that was up from 2 years earlier. So what to make of the ratings? The Cowboys, the most high-rated team in the team that gets the best ratings in all of NFL, they had a Sunday night game in week 1 against the Rams. I mean, two national teams, one team coming from a major market. The other team has a huge national following, and their ratings were down. So you might say, well, it's all because of the social justice issues. People are fed up about that, and they told you they were going to tune out, and they did. And I'm not naive enough to think that there isn't a certain segment of the fan base that did that, because I know how people are, and people would deprive themselves of the joy of watching football just to prove a point, just to say, look, I don't want to see this stuff. I told you I wasn't going to watch. I'm not watching. So it'd be stupid of me to think that wasn't part of it. But is it the sole reason why the ratings were down? I don't know. Ratings are down for everything in TV anymore, because the pie, if you're listening on a podcasting platform, I'm making the circle of a pie, and it used to be like 3 or 4 slices, 3 or 4 big slices. That's how the entertainment pie used to be. Now it's everybody gets a tiny sliver of the entertainment pie, because we have obviously network TV. Cable's a major player now, and you have streaming television. So everybody's out there trying to get your ratings. So the ratings are down for everything. But as far as the NFL is concerned, they still dwarf everybody else. And the one thing that kind of goes against all the stuff about the social equality, the demonstrations that people say that they're boycotting the NFL over, is the Bucks and the Saints game from last Sunday on Fox. That drew 26 million people. That was Fox's highest rated week 1 game since 2016. So how do you explain that? You might say, well, it was history. Brady was making his debut with the Bucks, and he was going against Drew Brees. It was must-see TV. Okay, fine, but if you're done with the NFL, then you're done with the NFL. There shouldn't be any exceptions. It can't be like Dwight Schrute in that one episode of The Office where he was shunning Andy Bernard, but he was unshunning him to talk to him and then shunning him again. Either you're boycotting the NFL or you're not. So if you were boycotting the NFL, you shouldn't be drawn in by a compelling matchup. So if I hypothesized, wow, that was a big word to try to say on my podcast. But if you thought that a certain thing would act a certain way under certain conditions, and you tested 4 of them, and 3 of them acted the exact way you thought they would, and the 4th one acted the exact opposite, you probably wouldn't, if you were a scientist, you probably wouldn't draw conclusions just yet. You would want to do more research. So as far as these ratings are concerned, I'm not discounting that people have turned away because of the the anthem issue and all the demonstrations, the names on the helmet, and some players kneeling. I'm not discounting that, but I just want to see how this all plays out as we move forward. Will the ratings continue to drop? Because if this was a widespread sentiment, like everybody was saying all summer, like you watch, we all feel the same way, because you know how people are. If they have a worldview, they feel like the entire world feels the same way they do. So you watch, we all feel the same way. If that was really the case, then I think the ratings would be down like 50, 60, 70%, not 15 or 20%. So that's something I'm sure, I know the NFL is paying attention to that. I'm certainly going to be paying attention too, because I just find this may be the most fascinating topic I've ever seen that really doesn't have anything to do with sports, but does. It's not really part of the actual playing of any game, but it's involved with sports, and it really fascinates me. So I'm going to be keeping my eye on that moving forward. And that brings me to my next topic. And again, thank you all for sticking with me and joining me on this. I have so much to talk about now. This is great. I mean, I spent all off season honing my skills on my own podcast, and now I finally have so many topics to discuss. I can't fit them all in. But another thing I wanted to talk about were the lack of penalties called in week 1 overall. I was doing some research on Yahoo and a couple other sites, and holding penalties were down 78% across the league, 78% from the year before. Overall, there were only 199 penalties thrown in week 1, and that includes the ones that were declined. So that's about 12 a game, which isn't bad. The Steelers and the Giants had 7 total penalties. One of them was pretty questionable. But then again, I saw a couple replays where some Steelers defenders should have been perhaps called for illegal contact or holding, and they weren't. So that kind of brings me to my point, where I mentioned it in a previous podcast, and I've actually written about this a few times over the years. I read this book back, I think I'm going to say 2014, 2015, called Scorecasting, where the people who wrote the book and did the research for the book, they wanted to know why teams did so well at home all throughout sports, why they had such an overwhelming advantage. And when it comes to the NHL and the NBA, they acknowledge that travel had a little bit to do with it, because those leagues schedule a lot of back-to-back road games. Like a Tuesday and a Wednesday, you have to go. You're playing in Minnesota one night and Houston the next, or whatever. So that they factor that in. But they said based on their research, the number one factor in home teams having such a huge advantage is the officials are influenced by the fans. If you have 50, 60, 70,000 people all wanting a result to go a certain way, you might influence an official to call something in your favor. Maybe a ticky-tack call goes in your favor because it would favor, because you're the home team, so it goes in your favor. So just like the ratings, I don't want to jump to any conclusions after 1 week, but it's interesting to see if it'll be interesting to see if that continues moving forward, because it was a pleasure watching Monday's game. I mean, again, there were only 7 penalties. There wasn't one single challenge by either coach. Not even the Claypool play was challenged by Joe Judge. I figured that at that point in the game, a new head coach, he'd want to, just challenge it just to show his guys that he's out there fighting for them. But he didn't even challenge that play. I mean, it could have very easily been called incomplete, but based on the replay, it would have been hard to it could have been called incomplete on the field, but it was called a catch. And going back and reviewing it, it would have been hard to overturn, but it was still pretty close. So that was a joy to watch, and I hope that continues. I hope the low penalty continue. I read somewhere that there was an emphasis a couple of years ago on a certain holding call, and it made the holding calls go up substantially, and that really bogged NFL games down. So they kind of asked the officials to de-emphasize whatever hold they were calling, but I don't think that was much of an issue. I don't think that was much of an emphasis in week one. I think it's just a coincidence that these officials kept their flags in their pockets. So I hope that continues. And I have one more thing I want to talk about. Then I will open it up to some questions. And that is tomorrow's game, or Sunday's game, I should say, between the Steelers and Broncos at Heinz Field. It's the Steelers' home opener, of course, and as I just said, there won't be any fans in the stands. But I still think the Steelers are at a huge advantage here, because the Broncos have to fly cross country and play out of their time zone. And they came off a pretty ugly loss on Monday night. The kicker Gostkowski, the Titans kicker, missed four kicks, and they still lost because he kicked the game winner at the end. And it wasn't a pretty game by either team on Monday night, but I thought that the Titans had the better of the play, and they probably would have won. Again, they would have won rather easily if not for Gostkowski and all the kicks that he missed. But the Broncos have some injury problems of their own. They're missing Von Miller, obviously. He's out for the year after having surgery to repair a dislodged tendon in his ankle, which just sounds so painful. I mean, anytime you have an injury where something's dislodged, that has to be extremely painful. So I can only imagine what kind of rehab he's going to need to get back to 100%. But they're without him, and they're going to be without A.J. Bowie, their cornerback, who suffered a separated shoulder against the Titans on Monday night. So he was placed on injured reserve, so he'll be out for at least a few weeks. So I think the Broncos are ripe for the picking. I think their defense could be exploited. Derrick Henry had, I want to say, what did he have? 118 yards on 31 carries for the Titans. So he didn't gash them. He averaged 3.7 yards per carry. So it's not like he gashed them, but I do think they can run on them, and I think they can pass on them. Obviously, without AJ Bowie in the lineup, I think the Steelers' weapons, that they run four deep now. I think that's pretty obvious after Monday night that they're certainly four deep at wide receiver, and of course they have Vance McDonald and Eric Ebron. So I think there's definitely plenty of passing weapons to throw out the Broncos defense. So I look for the Steelers to try to take advantage of that. As far as the Steelers' strength on defense, getting after the quarterback, I don't know. The Broncos gave up 41 sacks last year, which is a lot, but they didn't give up any the other night, and the Titans only hit Drew Lock 4 times in the game. Jeffrey Benedict on Know Your Enemy on Wednesday, he mentioned how well Munchak's line units start protecting the quarterback as he gets into his second or third year coaching that team's line. And you certainly saw that here in Pittsburgh, how Ben Roethlisberger was under siege constantly and then Munchak took over as the offensive line coach, and he enjoyed many years of a low sack percentage. Now, of course, they drafted a lot of really good offensive linemen, so that played into it. So we'll see how that goes, because certainly the Steelers' strength and the thing that they like to do is put pressure on the quarterback. Nobody gets after the quarterback like the Pittsburgh Steelers, dating back to 2017. So the Titans certainly don't have the Steelers' pass rushing prowess. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get after the young quarterback and sort of force him into some mistakes. So that's one thing to look at. And another thing to look at for the Steelers on offense is who gets to start at running back. Will it be James Conner, or will it be Benny Snell Jr., who had 113 yards on 19 carries last week and looked really good? He looked really explosive, really fast. And James Conner looked timid right from the very beginning. He even said over the week during the week that he didn't know quite when he suffered the ankle injury that forced him out of Monday's game. He only carried the ball, I want to say, 6 times for 9 yards, and then he left the game with an ankle injury. And as of Friday, it's still not 100%, and he said he's making progress, but it has yet to be determined as I'm sitting here doing this podcast anyway, if Conner will start on Sunday. But if I were the coach, I would go with Benny Snell, because I think he looks like the better running back right now, and I think you have to go with your hot hand. I think you owe that to your football team to give it the best shot to win. And I think, I'm not saying long term James Conner isn't the Steelers' starting running back, but for week 2 it should be Benny Snell. So there you go. Bill Davis, the Snell cow. That's right. Mike Tomlin called. That's a great comment. Mike Tomlin called James Conner his bell cow running back right before the season, and he inadvertently gave Benny Snell a new nickname thanks to his awesome performance on Monday. So I think the Steelers are going to be fine along the line, at least for Sunday. I think they're going to be okay, and I think they're going to control the game. And I think it's going to be a lot like last Monday's game. I think it's going to be fairly close early. And I look for Pittsburgh to pull away, and don't worry, I'm not going to be like the one Bear skit on SNL picking a lopsided score every week. But I do look for the Steelers to win rather handily tomorrow. They're 7-point favorites, and this isn't a betting site, but I look for them to cover those points. I look for them to win somewhere like 28-10, 27-10, 26-10, something like that. I think that's the kind of game it's going to be. So that's all I wanted to talk about. And now I will take some questions before I sign off. So let's see what you got, guys. Here we have here's a comment from Ezra, a long time. I keep doing that. You guys you're really fast with your comments. Here's a comment from Ezra. If we sit Conner on Sunday, that won't be good for his confidence. Well, I mean, I don't think they can worry about his confidence right now. They have to worry about winning games, and Mike Tomlin has to worry about having his team's confidence. And if his team thinks that he's playing favorites with certain players, then they're going to lose confidence in him. So I think you have to go with Benny Snell. I think you have to go with the guy who's exuding confidence right now, and that's the great nephew of the Super Bowl III hero. So here's a comment from DJTYT only. Tony, just FYI, I think I made the same mistake. I think the NFL got rid of PI challenges in April or May. I was looking for them to on Monday. Well, no, yeah, they what they got rid of, I think they got rid of challenging pass interference. That was something that was a disaster last year, because first of all, the officials, the few that they did call, seemed to be iffy, or the few that they overturned on replay were iffy, and they just refused to overturn any as the season went along. So here's a $5 super chat from Snowman. What happened to the Friday shows? I don't know. We've had some changes. What show are you talking about? The live mic with Michael Beck, I think. I think they switched that to audio only. I want to say, but I think he's doing an audio only version of that now, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to check into that. And here's Ryan O'Toole. If they bench Connor for a bad start, should they bench the rest of the offense because they all had a crappy start? It's not a matter of a bad start. It's a matter of can you rely on him health-wise? And he hasn't proven that yet over the first 3 years of his career. And Benny Snell just looks like the better back. Sometimes it's not about just benching him because he had a bad start. It's benching him because he can't stay healthy, and the guy behind him looks like the better player right now. So that's why you bench him, not because of the bad start. Yeah, sometimes players have bad starts, and you have to keep going back to them. But it's just how it goes sometimes in the NFL. That's why Jerry Glanville said it stands for not for long, because sometimes a player will come along and take your job. I'm not saying that's happening right now. I'm just saying for week 2, Benny Snell looks like the better player, and he should get the start. And we'll see what happens. Here's a comment from Nathaniel Zarati. I think if Ben calls all the plays, we will start off a lot better in the first quarter. Well, he's not going to call all the plays, but there are situations late in like during 2-minute drills where he does call the lion's share of the plays, and the offense does run really well under those circumstances. But that's just not how they do it in the NFL anymore. I mean, it used to be quarterbacks called all their own plays. Mark Malone called his own plays, but now they don't. Now coaches feel like it. I heard coaches even say this. They feel like there's just too much on a quarterback's plate in modern NFL offenses. Running the show in modern offenses to call their own plays. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. It could be just that coaches are control freaks and they want to micromanage everything. I don't know, but the offense does do really well, and this goes back to even when Todd Haley and Bruce Arians were the coordinators. The offense does function really well when Roethlisberger calls a lot of his own plays. Let's see here. Here's one from Michael Toole. Dawson only played 5 snaps at the end of the game, but in those 5 snaps, he looked honestly a lot better than Wisniewski. He'll make a few mistakes against the Broncos, but he'll be okay. Well, I mean, it's hard to base anything off of 5 or 6 snaps, but yeah, I mean, you never know when a player is going to. You never know when you're going to find your next great young player, and maybe it's Kevin Dawson. I mean, here's a guy that's certainly used to starting. He started for 4 straight years at Louisiana, so he's definitely. I think he's not going to be awed by starting in the NFL, and I think it's going to help that he won't be doing so in front of a stadium full of fans, so that'll help him out a little bit. So you never know. I mean, if it's a small sample size, but we'll see how that carries over into Sunday's action. And I'll take one more from just me, and then I will bid you all adieu. Any predictions on us, meaning the Steelers, having a number 1 receiver, or will they all be 2s again? I mean, it all depends on what your definition of a number 1 receiver is. Does it mean number 1 in terms of Pro Bowler, difference maker, or in terms of volume? I mean, I think Juju Smith-Schuster is their number 1 receiver in terms of the playmaker. I think he's shown that. As far as volume, it might be Deontay Johnson. I don't know. I mean, they're not going to – if somebody steps up and proves that he's a bona fide superstar, they're not going to limit him. They're going to utilize him. So that's all I had for today, and it was a fun show. I enjoyed talking to you all, and I will talk to you again on Monday on the Steelers Hangover with Brian Anthony Davis. Enjoy Sunday's game. Go Steelers.